And good morning. Thank you for joining us. I am Tamara Scott. We are here in studio today, and we're here to help you when the headlines hit home. If God expects us to live it through it, He's directed us how to do it, no matter what the circumstance is, no matter what the headline reads. And so we have to remember, no matter what it looks like on our day planner, God has no surprises on His day planner. So thanks for being with me. I've got a guest in studio today. We have studio and our guest too. First, I want to just touch on a couple of things. We've had another school shooting. And you know what's really tragic about it? No one's talking about it. It's not even in the news like it used to be. Yes, I pointed out that in the past when these would happen, those newscasters and those very people in media who would mock those of us with faith and try to destroy those of us with faith from being able to use or talk about our faith in a spiritual realm. I'll take my water off the set here. I just realized that. Were the people who were praying when that happened. But this time I heard nothing. This time it's going by unnoticed because it's becoming so every day. And that is really tragic. And I think the key here is going to be to stand against those who are going to promote gun control or restricting our freedoms and our liberties that are protected in our Constitution, endowed by our Creator. But it's going to come to why. Why are students turning to such violent behavior? What's missing in their homes? What role don't they have to mentor them and model for them just the old-fashioned golden rule? And what drugs may they be on that someone has sought as a substitute for a steadiness, a parenting? I understand sometimes drugs are necessary, but it's very, very rare. And we have to admit that the overprescription of drugs, Ritalin, behavior, mind-altering drugs on our children is phenomenal. And I don't know that is the case in this one, but I do know Dr. Ann Blake Tracy, who's been a guest on this show on other radio stations, has studied it, and it is too often, part of the case. So our hearts do go out, even though this is not getting media. Our hearts go out because lives have been affected, and that's because our culture's been infected, because we as the church haven't been effective. Okay. Moving on, Matt Barber, former colleague from Concerned Women for America, has written a column for WorldNet Daily. He's with Liberty Counsel right now. And he wrote an article about a young man going into the women's restroom in the high school. I'll tell you what, I was on radio talking about this back in 2002, 2003, and people said that's a red herring. I was on public television with Senator Matt McCoy, and when we bring up instances like this, it's a red herring. Guess what? Red herrings are now happening. And everything that we said, that we've warned, that we cautioned about, is now taking place in one fashion or another. University of Northern Iowa just had homecoming events, and a transgender individual, I believe, was selected queen. No judgment here. I'm just saying those things that you said to us would never happen are happening. We must understand that while we have total will, free will, to do or not do, or to walk away from God's mandates, our founding fathers stood firmly on them, which is why America's been so blessed. And we have free will whether we will or not. But we don't have free will from the consequences of when we don't stand on them. So today, we're going to move forward, and I have in studio with me someone who said, I'm not going to take this sitting down. I have rights, I have liberties endowed by my Creator, and you're not going to take them away simply because you're not liking what's happening right now. Joining me is Joel Kurtenitis. Joel is on the State Central Committee for the Republican Party of Iowa. He's also very active in many issues in Iowa, and well respected by those who know him as a bright young man with a great potential. Joel, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So you snuck out, got time away from the job to head over to the studio. Thanks to your boss for allowing you this time out.
Sure thing. I'll pass it on.
So you called me a couple weeks ago. Your heart was aching.
Yeah.
Tell our listeners, our viewers, why.
Well, I was watching what was going on in Washington, D.C., and, the government shutdown had a lot of things going on that really some of us thought were just out of line. And one of those was that the president had shut down parks and monuments and things like that in order to kind of make a point with the American people, it seemed. And so I was very concerned about that, and I saw Congressman Steve King from here in Iowa go help some veterans into the World War II memorial. And I had a lot of respect for what he did, and it got me thinking, these are our memorials. This is public land. This is property that our tax dollars pay for. So why are we being denied access to things, especially open-air memorials that require no maintenance or there's no cost of people walking through them? And so I thought, well, that's just ridiculous. This is an opportunity for the American people to say, no, you're not going to use these things as bargaining chips. You're not going to use our land
or
as
punishment.
Bargaining chips or punishment, right?
I mean, it really seemed more like punishment. Last week we had Joy Pullman on talking about data mining in the Common Core, and we will be talking more about Common Core. Shane Vanderhart, founder and editor-in-chief from Caffeinated Thoughts, will be joining us, and we'll be talking about the executive order that Governor Branstad has signed, giving us some pause on Common Core, if you will. But Joy and I were trying to look some things up on the government websites, and not only were they were not available. Someone had gone in, programmed, and said, these sites are closed due to government shutdown, which takes more input, more manpower than just leaving them there. Yeah. Obviously, this was an attempt to make things inconvenient. I had a reporter call me yesterday about Senator Ted Cruz and what he's doing and this government shutdown. And I said, honestly, what happened, the interruption in services, was not the shutdown in government. It was this administration's inability to understand what is essential and what is not, because they are so removed from the people of this country. Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't take it sitting down. You wanted to go see your monuments.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like I said, it was an opportunity because of the way things were being handled there that I thought for people to kind of stand up and make a statement. I've seen, and I told people this when I was considering the idea for the Free DC project, I've seen, a lot of marches come and go here and there, and particularly in Washington, and it seems like they just never accomplish anything. People show up and then they make a speech and they get really upset and then they go home and nothing ever happens. But this I felt like was a unique opportunity where, we had armed guards and barricades stopping us from getting to see, open-air memorials. And so I called some folks and I asked them, I think this might be something that we should go to D.C. and try to make a move on. Am I crazy for thinking this? And the feedback that I got from other conservatives around was just encouragement. Yeah, we should do this. We should be taking a stand on this. And so I said in my heart that I was going to put something together for it. And the other thing that spurred me on this was another video I saw of some activists in D.C. a couple weeks prior. Well, it would have been about a week prior. And they had crossed the barricades, and they were talking to a lot of tourists and people that were there in front of the Lincoln Memorial and trying to call them to come up and follow them across the barricades. And the response was that everyone cheered, everyone clapped, and everyone agreed with what they were saying, but nobody would cross the lines.
We're cowards.
And
arrests are expensive.
Well, right, and it resonated with me. I looked at that and I thought, man, that's not a free people right there. I mean, why are we afraid to go on land that's ours? Why are we afraid to stand up for our rights? And so I thought, this is an opportunity. I'm going to go out there, and of course, I'm mentally preparing myself for the worst. I'm thinking I'm going to get tased and dragged away, but that's not what ended up happening.
Don't tase me.
And so, and Ryan, we have the clip. And so for those of you who are watching on webcast1live.com, you can follow along. We're going to play part of that video if it's okay. Ryan, if you'll go ahead and start that. And I love what you've done with this video. It's done very well. But I think that, too, while that's coming up, Ryan, there were just organic pockets of people feeling there's an uprising taking place. This president may have done a little too much, a little too soon. The people weren't quite captive enough yet, and they may rebel yet.
From the moment I set foot on this journey to come from Iowa to here, I had the full intent of visiting my monuments in D.C. I am scared out of my mind. I've never done something like this. I'm a 10-year home builder. I put together this project for the simple reason that I know people are upset, and I've heard a lot of folks standing up and taking courage on this, but there's been too few. There's been too few that have voices to be heard. I decided that I would accept that challenge to make DC listen, and I am going to go over those barricades, and I'm calling anyone who would join me peacefully and respectfully walk up these steps and send a message to DC that we're not going to be locked out of places that are ours.
That's right.
And the video goes on as they start hopping over the barricade. And Ryan, keep that queued up because we're going to go on little by little. I can hear in your voice, you're a little timid. You're a little unsure of what you're doing. These are just some youngsters, if you will, and some folks who and of course, Greg Crawford met you there, one of our friends, one of our patriots. But what was happening that weekend? The truckers were striking. The veterans who had been refused the ability to see their monuments built in their honor decided if they could take Bunker Hill, they could take Capitol Hill. And it's not even Capitol Hill, it's the White House. Mm-hmm. Let's go on. I love what this young lady says, and maybe you know who this young lady is. At 1:20 in, I can't imagine what you were going through, Joel. I can't imagine the rush.
Come on. Have some guts. Let's go. Nobody's gonna hurt.
Come on, folks. There's no law. There's no law barring you from being on your land.
And were the guards standing up there as you're doing this?
Yeah, there were 3 of them.
Where did all these people come from, Joel?
Many of them were already there. Many of them followed us from other.
Okay, here's the voice of that lady. Can we turn her up? Ryan?
Any of the monuments, I had heard and seen on the news what was going on with the barricades, and it just made my blood boil. Being here today and seeing the courage that so many fellow Americans put forth, it's more than I could ever expect, and I'm just so proud to be a part of it.
Can you pause it right there, Ryan? Thank you. Who is she? Did you know her?
Yeah, absolutely. She's one of ours from Iowa.
Very good.
So yeah, there were a group of 8 of us that actually went out there, and we were all prepared to go up there together. And I honestly don't think I could have done it without the other folks from here to stand with me. And I turned to them before I started speaking, and I said, I want you guys to know when I'm done talking, I'm going over there. You know, come what may, and I want to know if anybody's going with me.
And let's start at 1:40 and hear Katie's comment.
We stood in front of Lincoln, and my group, we hugged each other and we said, "To God be the glory." I've never been more proud to be an American than right now.
I'm completely overwhelmed right now. It's so good to see courage in people's hearts, and my hope is that more Americans come up here, take these monuments, they're yours.
Build the patriotism back in this country.
Just pause it right there. I mean, I get emotional watching it, Joel. I watched it 2 or 3 times the first time I saw it. I'm just so proud of you because we're already serfs. You said it earlier, we're not servants. We are. Unfortunately, we are already serfs to the point that most of us can't afford to take time out and go stand at our Capitol. We can't afford the risk of being arrested, the attorney's fees, and whether or not judges will be fair with us. Thank you.
It was an honor for me, and it wouldn't be an overstatement to say that it was life-changing for me. And I was terrified out of my mind, especially when I started speaking, and I didn't show it on here, but I've been doing public speaking since I was 8, and I was scared out of my mind, not because I was in front of people, but because I really didn't know what was going to happen when we started heading up the stairs. And I had some notes to go off of on my phone, and I couldn't even manage the touch screen anymore because my hands were shaking too badly, so I had to put it away and sort of just go with what I had at that point.
And Ryan, let's start at 2:27, and I think this is more footage than it is audio. It's while you're sitting up there, and Shane, certainly join in this conversation if you wish. We'll probably talk over it while it goes. Ryan, go ahead and play it if you would, please. Here come the armed police escorts to deal with these unruly citizens.
Sir, you're in a restricted area. You took down police line tape to get through the restricted area.
I went under it.
You went under it.
But you went over it. You're so nervous.
Police line. Ergo, you're subject to arrest. So I'm asking you to leave the memorial and go ahead, conduct your protest down at the bottom of the steps.
will not resist you. Would you please cede the skits to my dad?
You're such a polite potential criminal.
Sure. I got a number of a lawyer, and I'm probably going to need one, it looks like, so...
For those of you who are just
Helping you
listening, we're
realize.
watching Joe. We're watching the emotion, the raw emotion.
Okay.
He's giving his things to Greg Cumming to take to his father, as he
Come too
may
far.
be put in cuffs and taken away.
And I just encourage those folks not to be afraid. I encourage those folks to utilize their rights, so I'm going to do it.
This is exactly what America needs to do in a peaceful way. Martin Luther King led the way. That's exactly what this young man Joel did today. And hopefully his story will inspire other Americans to stand up and reignite that fire. Fear is courage hanging on just a little bit longer. And that's exactly what it is, brother.
Let's pause it right there, Ryan. Joel, thank you for being so transparent. What was going through your mind?
Oh goodness. Well, I mean, when they were threatening me, I felt fairly confident that I hadn't broken any law and that there wasn't anything that they could do. And in the back of my mind, it was like, well, if you had legitimate legal concerns, why didn't you do something about it 40 minutes ago? But I was scared. I mean, I've seen folks get abused at the hands of police that are acting outside the law. There's stories about that go from time to time, and so I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if I was going to be taken away, and like you said, I could lose my job over this. I could lose a lot of things, and that's one of the things that they were hitting me with up there was, okay, who do you work for? Do you have any government contracts? This will ruin your career. This will ruin your life. And so, I mean, I was pretty terrified. But
Were they saying that helpful, or were they saying that in a harmful, threatening manner?
Oh no, that was the threat. Is you need to think long and hard about this, son, because this is going to ruin your life. This is going on your record. So that was more my concern. I wasn't. There were 400 angry people at the bottom of the barricades. I wasn't too concerned with any excessive force being used at that point. But I was certainly scared that it would impact my career and my future and become a long legal battle when I just went to D.C. to see my memorials.
One of our favorite patriots, Greg Cumming, was out there. He's the man with the flag, and that's the voice we were hearing. And Ryan, can you play at 425 Greg's comments?
This is most definitely a top experience for me, and as far as pride for my country, to see that the hope inspired in so many citizens like this young man Joel, and hopefully that'll continue to spread like wildfire.
Thank you.
He put
Let's
his phone
stop
and
it right
everything in there.
Greg has been in the battle. You bring hope to the rest of us. This new generation, this ready resistance, reminds me of, I think, what the Founding Fathers would have had. And I'm so thankful for some of you.
Well, I was so glad to have Greg there with me. I had talked to him earlier in the day and a couple days before that about what we had planned to do, and I'm not a big name. I don't have a lot of important friends everywhere, so I was trying to make this happen just on my own strength and taking a couple days off of work and coming out, and he was tremendously helpful in helping us set up everything. And part of it, I believe, and I was telling someone, I think part of the power of what happened there was based in the fact that I wasn't successful in turning it into a huge event like I had planned. Because what I had wanted to do and what I had talked about doing with many people was, getting partnership with other conservative organizations and bringing some legislators and folks out to stand with us. And that's what I really tried to do. And almost no one was interested. We did get a mention earlier in the day from Glenn Beck at the Clean Up DC project there, but that was cold and rainy and not a whole host of people showed up for that either. But I think the Lord had his hand on it. I think it truly worked out for the best because it didn't have to be with the lights and the cameras. It didn't have to be led by folks that are household names everywhere. It was just everyday Americans showing up with signs. And when we got there with the signs in the beginning, I was just amazed at how people were anxious to come hold the signs with us and come stand with us. People that we
People
didn't
are
even know.
looking for a leader. People want to speak out, but they don't know how, and they just need that person out front to help them. You were that person that day. You thought maybe you wanted a production, but God had another plan. We said that earlier in the show. God has a plan. I didn't know you were going to say this, but God has a plan for us. Seldom does it look like what we envision, but it's usually better.
It reminds me of because suddenly you didn't have many people around you, and that when you were getting confronted. And I was a youth pastor in youth ministry for 20 years, and I saw the beginnings of the See You at the Pole movement. And the things that always fascinated me wasn't the schools that had hundreds of kids around the flagpole, but the schools that had one, kid coming to pray. And that, I think that takes an extra amount of courage when you don't have those, because if there's safety somewhat with the big names and the lights, but when it's just Joel and his park police officer and a camera, that takes some guts.
Very authentic.
And I really appreciate you doing that, Joel.
No, like I say, it was an honor, and one of the things that's shaped my mentality on that is that my favorite movie is Braveheart, and there's a line in there that says, "Men don't follow titles; they follow courage," and that's been something that I've kept with me since I was a kid. And so I thought maybe this would be a chance to demonstrate that and maybe inspire it in other people.
Now, Ryan, we already played Greg Cummings' top experience, right? Okay, let's go on to one of the reasons I think Joel Kurtnitis probably had the courage to do what he did. Let's go to 450 to Papa K.
So often I think we've become a real country of followers, people that are kind of weak, and they're just waiting for somebody. He was out here with his hands shaking, Anybody else that would have made that speech, their hands would have been shaking. But you just keep pushing forward and you go, and he did it. That's my son. I'm proud of him.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, so I'm teary-eyed.
Yeah, I didn't know they interviewed him when I was up there, and when I saw that the first time on the video, that was the first I'd heard of it, and I lost it again, so yeah.
Thank you to a father who stands by his son, but thank you to a father who's also set the pace, done the work, done the preliminary work to raise a young man into a fine young adult.
I appreciate it. He's been my role model, and he's a godly man and a courageous man. And my parents have done a tremendous job of preparing me for this world, and I feel like I don't come up to the bar a lot of times, but I was so glad to have him there with me. And my dad and several other folks tried to come back through again after the police showed up, and that one wasn't quite as successful as the first one. But boy, just the heart that was there, and many of the folks that were with us were veterans, and my dad's a veteran as well. And so it was just tremendous to see the outpouring of patriotism and of courage that happened there.
What you did that day was most moving. What the video has continued to do is most inspiring. Thank you so much. Shane, do you have anything?
Yeah, well, what was the final outcome? Obviously, you got to come back to Des Moines.
Yeah, I'm not joining you live from jail in D.C., so something must have happened. No, the final outcome was I had actually a great conversation with the guards that were up there. They didn't do anything. I earned my libertarian stripes by using the word detain for the first time. And so after a while, they didn't. They just sort of sat back and waited for me to leave. They said that they were going to come back. But really what ended up happening was some more undesirable elements of people that were kind of wanting to cause trouble came over to the bottom. And when that happened, I just realized it wasn't something I wanted to be a part of. So I went ahead and left. I felt like what I went there to do was done at that point. And I just wanted to, my point wasn't to start a confrontation with them in the first place. My point was to go visit my monument.
Yeah.
So that's what I've done.
And Joel, that happens with every organization. Once people see the success of it, they want to come be part of it. And often then it gets tainted, no matter what the event, what the organization is. But you did it. You said to me on the phone, I'm either going to make him back down or crack down. And by Gumby, you made him back down. Thank you, Joel Kurtnitis, for being with us today. I am Tamara Scott. We've got to go to break. We'll be right back. We'll be talking about the Common Core. We'll be talking about Governor Terry Branstad's executive order on the Common Core in Iowa. Other states are doing similar activities pending legislation. petitions, and we'll tell you how you can do the same in your state and what you can be doing to stop this violation on your children in the classroom. It is a federal takeover of the classroom, and we'll be discussing that when we come back. Stay tuned with us at webcast1live.com. My thanks to J. Michael McCoy for allowing me in the studio to get this truth to you today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershot.
I'm administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotta be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. But is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
And I am Tamara Scott. Thanks for joining us today. I think I've got all my tears wiped away. My nose may still be a little bit red, but that video was moving, and it's available on YouTube. And, of course, we'll have it up on, I'll put it on my Facebook page, but also on Truth for Our Time is a great way to find it. I'm using that Facebook page as a great way to get information to you until we come up with our brand and who we are.
Still haven't done that yet.
You know,
huh?
I'm not a big self-promoter. It's just not comfortable for me, but I know I need to be a good steward.
Tamara Scott Live.
We've been using that, but it just seems so odd to me to go, I'm Tamara Scott with Tamara Scott Live. It seems odd to me. So, but I'm so thankful to have the time here for J. Michael McCoy to say, Tamara, come do this. I think you have truth that needs to get out. And he's right. Common Core is so incredibly important right now. And Shane, we have really riled some cages, and people are really, I think it's like picked up steam like on steroids in the last 3 or 4 months.
Definitely. I could see the last 6, right. Even going back further than that, right around the new year, when Michelle Malkin and Glenn Beck started picking it up, and it's like, wow. With truthinamericaneducation.com, I mean, we saw a huge jump in daily visitors after those two folks got involved. So definitely has sparked a lot of interest, and it's really been bipartisan interest. I've talked with folks that are definitely not that are to the left of me, who are concerned about Common Core as well. We might have different reasons for our concern, but there's definitely common ground. So yeah, the media. But if you look at the mainstream media, you're not going to see that because they paint it as though the opposition's Tea Party, and that's about it. So that's pretty far from the truth.
Okay, and so we're going to talk today about the executive order that this governor has signed after, and let me just be honest, you've written articles how unfortunate it was that this same governor had praised Common Core.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Certainly, I'm not on their friend list when it comes to, I've been probably a pain in his side ever since his administration started with education policy, whether it's Common Core or other things that I felt have really eroded local control in education and further centralizing it in Des Moines. It's on one hand, this executive order was encouraging to see. At least it seemed like he was starting to listen. But my fear is that people are going to start doing victory laps prematurely when
right. If that was just enough to quiet the dissension.
Exactly. And I know there was some of that. That was part of the reason why they wanted to issue this, was to quiet some of the opposition. But you really need to know the issue. You need to know the history. And you need to realize, if you take away nothing else from this radio program, those who are listening, this executive order did not repeal the Common Core state standards. They still exist. They're still part of the Iowa Core now. In 2010, the State Board of Education adopted these and aligned our math and our ELA standards, English Language Arts standards, with the Common Core. So when you look at the Department of Education talks about the Iowa Core, when the governor talks about the Iowa Core, our math and our ELA standards are Common Core state standards. So just want everybody to realize that.
Thank you, because that is confusing for people.
Mm-hmm.
And we've done segments on that. We have dedicated all or most of the shows on Common Core because there's so information that needs to get out, as you know. And we'll come back and do maybe just one on the standards and the fact that they're not as great as everybody says they are. But so when this governor, when we hear that we've now got a pause, which is great. We applaud the governor for the executive order, but we still have to see that things are going to get done.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say we've got a pause. I do want to point out some things I think the executive order does do and that are positive, and I've called this a positive first step, so I'm not one that says, it's completely meaningless. I don't think it's completely meaningless. Right. First of all, it affirms the state of Iowa's constitutional role in education and not the federal role. I think that's important language, especially if the feds come back later and they double down on wanting to press even more standards, or they want to try this again with a different set of standards. At least we have something in writing from our governor that says, you know what, that's not appropriate. It also affirms the adoption of standards that they should be done in an open and transparent way. And this is a quote from the executive order: open, transparent way that includes opportunities for Iowans to review and offer input. That's great. I wish that happened back in 2010.
Right.
And I'd like that to happen right now. But at least he knows going forward that the process that was utilized in 2010 is not appropriate for the adoption of standards. That there needs to be public input. It needs to be transparent. The devil's in the details there. What that looks like, if he's for instance, if he likens the transparency to what we've seen so far with the next generation science standards and their road to adoption here in our state, I'm not encouraged by that. I want to see public hearings. I want to see people who are in favor, people who are against, speak, and let Iowans hear all of that testimony, rather than handpick a task force that's going to look at standards, only have one side presented, have a public survey done online. The people on the task force didn't even get the survey results until the night before their third meeting, and then they were called on a vote, to vote for it.
And that was last Wednesday while we were here in studio. That was the public hearing quote at the Science Center.
Yeah.
And the people on the committee didn't even get to see the survey results until the day before.
And exactly. And they didn't even get to see the crosstabs between the Iowa Core science standards and the next generation science standards. And if anybody's listening, you're wondering what's the next generation science standards. It's a little bit different than Common Core. Think of Common Core for science, except there's some different folks involved in the development. But essentially, it'll do the same thing for science as what the Common Core did for math and English language arts. So our state board of education will be probably considering this. I would assume, in December, maybe January. I think they'll probably have a vote on it before the legislature goes into session.
And so you're more than willing, folks, you're more than able.
Mm-hmm.
It is totally within your ability and right to call the Department of Education and voice your concern.
Absolutely. And those state board members need to hear from you. And if nothing else, you need to let them know that we don't really care for the process that's been being implemented in adopting these. I believe the task force was given a false choice. And I have to assume going back, this is probably resembles much of what the Common Core implementation process was like.
Right.
They were given a false choice. Hey, okay, here's our choice. We need to either keep the Iowa Core Science Standards or adopt the next generation science standards. I'm thinking option C.
C, yeah.
How
None
about
of the above?
none of the above? If the Iowa Core Science Standards stink, and by everything I've read, they probably do. Fordham Institute gave them a D.
And Fordham Institute is pro-Common Core.
They're
is it
pro-Common
not?
Core.
Was it funded by Gates?
They have been funded by Gates, not for the next generation science standards. I have to note but for the Common Core implementation, Gates isn't even necessarily behind the next generation science standards. What I've been able to see, if I'm wrong on that, somebody please correct me. But I haven't seen Gates funding attached to that yet. Yet, So, but it's fascinating to me to see you have these pro Common Core groups that are rah Common Core, but they're not necessarily in favor of next generation science standards. Actually, Fordham gave the next generation science standards a C. Okay, Iowa got a D. Next generation science standards a C. This is rigorous.
What a leap.
This is yeah.
What a jump.
Let's look at some of these states that they gave an A to maybe,
Right.
and look at their science
Right.
standards and use that as a template, and then tweak it, make it our own. I know we don't have to reinvent the wheel when we're looking at content standards,
Right.
because it's not that much different from state to state. But let's actually look at some strong standards that we could use if we must have state standards. Let's look at some of the best. We haven't even done that with the Common Core state standards. Even Fordham admitted in math, you had Indiana, California, D.C. had stronger math standards than the Common Core. They graded 11 states as having higher standards in the English language arts standards compared to Common Core. And this is supposed to be the best that we could get. I don't buy that at all. So, going back to the executive.
Yep. And we've got a caller. Should we take?
Okay. Yeah.
We've got Tanya. Tanya, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's great to be here today.
I recognize that voice. That is Tanya from Georgia.
Tanya Diddy.
Yeah.
Hey.
Thanks. Shane, you do such a great job on the Truth in American Education site, and we sure appreciate all that you offer out to us, up to date, up to the minute type of information. So it's great to speak to you as well.
I appreciate that, Tanya. Thanks.
Well, my question would be, and maybe in other states, I liked your explanation of going through the what your governor did and really acknowledging, some of the text in the the executive order. We've not gotten an executive order, but, what warnings or what would you give out to other states to try? We in Georgia would prefer not to do an executive order because I think it makes people think then this has gone away.
Right.
I guess maybe your suggestion, Shane, on a good offense to keep away from the executive order route.
Well,
any thoughts on that?
It wasn't something that we were pursuing either. It just happened.
Surprise, surprise.
So I'm not sure as far as there's anything you could do to keep it from happening if Governor Deal thinks that, hey, this is gonna. Well, I know he's has a contested primary, and suddenly
Yes.
Common Core is a nice wedge issue because isn't it your education superintendent that's running against him?
correct if there is another person that's running against him as well.
And all of a sudden, hasn't he shown some interest in the concern on Common Core?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he might look and say, hey, this could help drive even further wedge in between me and my opponent. And so I don't know if you're going to be able to stop him from doing it if he does it. But one thing, in the couple conversations I've had with Branstad administration officials, I've basically stated, this is great that you would like to do this, but it's probably not going to stop legislation. And it's important for folks on the ground in Georgia to realize that they need to continually encourage your state senators, your state representatives to pursue legislation, because one thing I pointed out to one of the Branstad administration officials is that, for instance, Governor Branstad's language on student data was excellent. It was very strong. It stated basically no student level data will be sent to the feds, only aggregate data that's required by federal law. That's, I think, about as clear as you can get. However, the only problem with that is should Governor Branstad, God forbid, get hit by a bus and we have or just lose an election.
Let's have a new election. That's much,
will be
that's
nicer.
much cleaner.
Yeah,
well, maybe not cleaner.
Not that I want anything to happen to Governor Branstad. I personally like him. He's a nice guy. The problem is the executive order goes away with the next administration.
They
could
really?
rescind. Well, they could rescind it if they want. I think it's better for it doesn't automatically sunset, but a governor could say I'm gonna repeal that
or ignore it, like administrations do at the federal level.
Exactly. So what needs to happen is, while this is a strong statement for an executive order, we need it codified.
I agree. And while the legislature is not to blame for Common Core coming into this state, it is the stopgate. It can put an end to it.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting too, and Tanya, you'll have to probably do the same in Georgia, but I looked at the Iowa Constitution, and they cited the Iowa Constitution in the executive order. For instance, they brought up the section, the General Assembly shall encourage by all suitable means the promotion of intellectual, scientific, moral, and agricultural improvement. Which is a fascinating statement that came out of the clause actually that brought about the adoption of land-grant university, not necessarily dealing with K-12 education. But the section of our Constitution I wish they cited, because I think it's very important, definitely illustrates that the state legislature has the ultimate constitutional authority in education. It says this: the General Assembly shall have the power to abolish or reorganize said Board of Education and provide for the educational interest of the state in any other manner that to them shall seem best and proper. So that State Board of Education only has authority that the state legislature gives. So it's important for the state legislature to reassert its authority if it's abdicated it to an unelected board. And I'd encourage our state legislators in Iowa to do that, because actually, in reality, when they passed the Iowa Core, they did abdicate some authority to the state board. They allowed them, in our Iowa code, it says that the State Board of Education shall have the authority to align the Iowa Core with any nationally or internationally recognized standards. Why our state legislature ever gave up that authority is beyond me, and they need to take it back.
And I think they are discussing that, discussing defunding part of it, discussing. I've heard discussions on whether or not, if your schools just had to alert parents every time they tested children, or gave an assessment, or some of this data mining collection, I think then parents might be awakened a little bit and annoyed. But you and I both know, Shane, that schools aren't always very good at sending that communication out ahead of time like they're supposed to. We have another caller. You want to take a break and go with that caller? We have Deborah on line 2. Deborah, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Tamara.
Deborah, can you hear me?
Hi. No, I couldn't hear you.
Okay. But you can now, right?
Yes, I can. It's great to talk with you, and I enjoyed meeting you in August.
So you were at the Glenn Beck Barton Project.
Yes, I was.
For our listeners and our viewers, that was Glenn Beck Studios, August 22nd, 23rd. You can go watch those shows online. But a national group, a group of concerned activist experts, how I got in, I don't know, but I was honored to be there, coming up with a strategy in stopping Common Core in the nation and having impact globally. Deborah, thank you for participating in that.
Well, thank you, and I really appreciate all the work that you're doing. It was great to hear some of the things that you're dealing with there in Iowa because, I think so many of us across the country have the same issues with our legislature and our state boards of education. And it's really encouraging to hear some of the positive things that people are able to do. I wanted to share with you just a few things that we are doing here in Montana.
Great.
Unfortunately, well, it's a good thing, actually, but our legislature only meets for 90 days every 2 years.
Oh,
Wow.
gosh, I wish we had that
We stand
here.
in awe of you.
Yeah.
It is a good thing most of the time. However, like most states, the legislature was bypassed when Common Core was brought into Montana. It was under the radar. The legislature was told, we're just changing our standards. It's not going to cost the state anything. And therefore, there was no fiscal analysis, which would have triggered a review by the legislature and some legislative action. So they were bypassed. It's now here, it's being implemented, and we will have to wait until 2015 before we can actually legislatively deal with it.
There's no ability to for them to go into a special session?
They could call for that. However, it is highly unlikely it would occur. We have a progressive governor.
And you'd have to have the political will to do it.
Exactly.
And this is the one concern I've heard, because you heard both of us react when we heard you only met every other year, and it just delights our hearts. But this is the one concern I've heard, is when the legislator's not in session, the bureaucrats are running the show.
Yeah, exactly. And like you were saying in Iowa, the same thing has happened here, where our Constitution provides 3 groups to have participation in what happens with our K through 12 schools. It's our legislature, the State Board of Ed, and then, of course, our locally elected trustees of the various districts. But our courts have judicially given more authority to our State Board of Education, and the legislature did not take back the authority that was taken away from them. We are now seeing with our newest legislators that they are willing to take on that fight. So we're getting a lot of interest from, a handful of people that are willing to stand up and do what they can. But one of the things that we're getting traction on is our petition that calls for a legislator citizen committee that would look at taking a look at getting us out of federal funding over the next 5 years. We think it's doable, and we have legislators that are willing to take that on.
That's great.
So that would be one way of curtailing some of the federal influence and demands upon our state.
And just to clarify, you said it was your newer or your younger or your more of your freshman legislators who are willing to take this on.
A lot of the younger ones, we have one in particular who is handling the privacy issues in our state, and I think he's got the first bill ever in the country that passed, and actually passed through our governor's office and is law, that deems personal information to be private to that individual. So I think that we can build upon that. And he was a freshman legislator. He's about 28 years old. And we do have some of our veteran legislators that are interested in working on the funding aspect. They're more familiar with the details of our complex funding formulas and how we might get out of the federal piece of that.
Yeah, it's not, and I mean, hearing that, I know from somebody who's, federal, we're going to cut off all federal funding, and that seems
it's
scary. But really, when you look at it, schools receive so little federal funding, really, when you compare it to the rest of their budget. it's like we can adjust. It's okay.
And
We
Deborah,
can
I don't
do
know
this.
if you've had this, but Henry Burke is very good to do a state-specific cost analysis.
Yes.
And he did that in Iowa, and that might be helpful to some of your legislators there, giving them some ammunition, if you will, on how to fight this.
Yep. In fact, I actually presented that to our interim Education and Local Government Committee because it was about $16 million higher than the Pioneer Institute estimate. And so far, most of that is entirely unfunded here in Montana.
And that's what people are going to find. In fact, when Henry was on this show, Louisiana was the one state who had actually gotten money back, should have been okay, and they were still coming back to their city councils and asking for bond referendums of $5 million plus to buy the technology, the iPads for their students, because no matter how much we're promised from the government, even if we're lucky enough to get it, and I don't think there's any guarantee of that right now with the way things are going, even if we would get the money they promise, the cost will far outweigh.
Yeah. Yeah, the technology will continue to change, and all of those iPads and computers will have to be continually updated.
Absolutely. And we see in California where they've already confiscated some of them back because students hacked in areas they shouldn't be. They sold them. They stole them.
Yeah.
It's just not working out.
That's
like,
shocking that students
like
would
it was
do
supposed to
anything
on
like
paper.
that.
So we've got,
go ahead.
Well, we're going to take a break here, but go ahead and finish that thought before we do.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say, one of the issues that we're dealing with here in Montana, as you know, we're such a huge state, and it's primarily rural. So we have areas that don't even have the broadband capacity.
Oh, wow.
And yet they're going to be demanded to keep all these tests online.
Oh, gosh.
That's government at our sharpest and finest.
Yeah.
And it will be mandated.
I know we'll be dealing now with that, too, in some Iowa school districts. Right now, I know Governor Branstad has an initiative to bring broadband to, all rural areas, but who knows how long that'll actually take.
And the whole thing is it's so unnecessary. When I look back to what our founding fathers had for reading instruction, Shane, back when the days when those 5th graders and 8th graders could answer the questions on the test that David Barton throws at us and we all quiver. When our founding fathers were schooled at home, when they were going to college at age 14, and when they were learning and becoming productive members of society in the government, serving their country as young teenagers. And what did they have? The Bible and maybe one other text.
Yeah.
And our founding fathers warned us that if we put too many other books in, that we would lose the emphasis and the teaching and the instruction and the depth of the Bible. Dr. Benjamin Rush, father of education, known by many, said, if we take the Bible out of the school, I fear how much time and money we'll spend in punishing crime when it would take so little to prevent it. And are we there? That's what this Common Core is. We're groping, trying to find something to replace, to fill the void that we have caused in 63 when we took prayer and the Bible out of the school. And this will not do it. It will continue to cost us. We've got to go to break. We'll be right back. I am Tamara Scott. Shane Vanderhart's in studio. Deborah Lamb is on the phone from Montana. We'll be right back after these messages. Please stay tuned with us at webcast1live.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
And I am Tamara Scott. We're coming back in for our last few minutes of the segment. We're talking with Shane Vanderhart. Governor Terry Branstad in Iowa did sign an executive order. We are pleased. We applaud that. It is a great start, as Shane has written on his website, Caffeinated Thoughts. But you also have the website Truth in American Education, which is a great resource for people to use.
And IowensForLocalControl.com for Iowa-specific information.
I forget. You're like me. You've got so many fingers out there.
Yeah, I wish I could boil it all down to
Don't
one.
you,
That would be a
though?
lot easier.
So Iowans for Local Control and also Truth in American Education. Both those would be good for anyone across the nation on
For
Common Core.
Common Core, yep.
Very good. And if you want information, you can email stopcommoncoreiowa@gmail, stopcommoncoreiowa@gmail. That's me. I may not be there, Johnny, on the spot, but I will get to you in a day or two, and we'll get some help to you. And also, we always talk about this book. Orlean Corley wrote this book. I ordered several. If you're from Iowa, I can help you get one. We're working with the publishing company on creating a special for you. If you're a listener or viewer of this program, they'll give you a special rate. We don't have that all ironed out yet, but it's a great handbook with good footnotes on just explaining Common Core and what we're up to. Common Core, Trojan horse for the education reform. And Shane, I want to come back and talk more about the executive order if we need to, give people an action item of what they still need to continue to do. But if I can, first I want to bring in a couple of different things. We heard the assignment that was about white privilege.
Oh, yeah.
Coming out of Michigan, of all places. And we didn't want to believe it, but it's on video.
Okay.
Eagle News, eagnews.org, has a video of it. What alarmed me was then later I saw on WorldNet Daily someone from the Department of Homeland Security, Mohammed Iliaberry, if I'm saying his name right, I'm trying, made a comment about Aaron Klein, reporter for WorldNet Daily, that he displays a Jewish demeanor in his appearances on Fox News. When asked further about it, Iliaberry charged that some white identity privilege types have a problem with a black president and brown Mexicans.
Oh, wow.
I'm
not even sure how to respond to that.
Exactly. And so when I'm and this is what I guess I appreciate doing with Common Core. I try and weave it together, connect the dots. I said at the beginning of the show, we help you when the headlines hit home. Because we don't want to think that these things are being taught to our kids, but they are. And then I see this coming out of the administration.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, I'm speechless. I mean, nothing like this should shock us, but it still manages to amaze that a government official would actually go on the record saying something like that.
Not only does he have a Jewish demeanor, he is Jewish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is that an issue?
It shouldn't be.
Why would you even bring any, attention to that?
Be. And I've said before too, I'm not against President Obama because he's African American.
No.
I applaud the fact that we elected an African American. I would be more than happy to vote for an African American who exhibited conservative ideals
and would stand on the Constitution.
I oppose President Obama's policies. Not the color of his skin.
Absolutely. To vote for someone simply because of their color is every bit as racist as to not vote for
I think
someone.
so. We don't need affirmative action in the Oval Office. And if there's a quality candidate, we'll take a look at it. I don't care what race they are. I don't care what gender. It doesn't matter to me. If they stand on the Constitution and they exhibit conservative ideals, I'm going to give them a look.
So a minute left, Shane Vanderhart with Caffeinated Thoughts, Truth in American Education, Iowans for Local Control.
Yeah. And there's probably a couple others we could throw in there too, but
that's right. You do right for the Iowa Republican and Republican
Oh,
Party.
no. I don't do Iowa Republican.
Oh, you don't? Republican Party of Iowa?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Give us quickly action. If you're listening, action you can do in Iowa and in other states too, if you can get it in.
Well, in Iowa, really everywhere, contact your legislators. Inform them about this issue. They need to act, and they need to act quickly. We don't have much time going on. Here in Iowa specifically, we can also encourage, I like the fact that we have, where he's going to implement public reviews down the road for standards, so he seems to be willing to go back and rewrite and redo. However, we need public hearings today.
Yes.
We shouldn't have to wait. We have issues with the Common Court now, not 2 years or whenever regular ends up being. But contact legislators, and then let Governor Branstad and our state legislators know that we need public hearings in Iowa now. We need to have this debate public.
Contact your legislators now. They're off session. They're at home. And call them at home, because what they do is greatly going to impact your home. So they want to hear from you. There are 700 bills that come through the legislature each session. They hear from the people who are going to benefit financially or in other services, but seldom do they hear from the people who will pay for them or be negatively impacted by them. You need to contact them. And in fairness, I did contact Linda Fandel, from the Department of Education. She's a special assistant on education to the governor. So sorry about that. And she could not join us today because she's so busy preparing for the governor's bowling conference coming up in November. A whole other show, because we just saw the attack on the white privilege. And we know that Christians throughout time have been the most persecuted race, beginning with the Stephen, persecution and martyr of Stephen in the Bible. So there's something we ought to be bringing Christians in as protected class.
At least Governor Branstad's approaching it, I think, from a more reasonable point of view of all types of bullying and not targeting special interests, from what I've seen.
I hope so. And I will be calling the office back to see if they will be having a special session for those who are Christians, because we know on college campuses, college classrooms, they suffer great persecution, repercussions, and threat of such, simply for having Judeo-Christian values on creation versus evolution in the science. We've seen that on our state universities. We've seen the professor who told the Republicans they could go blank at the University of Iowa. So we know we have, I guess that was a political one, but we have the Christian one, the conservative ones, who we know are continually under threat or fear threat. So we got to go. We're out of time. We did it again. I was going to try so hard to be done in 59, and we blew it by a minute. Ryan, thank you so much for your expertise in the glass cage. I appreciate what you do. Shane, thank you for joining me today. We'll be back next week. Drew Klein from Americans for Prosperity is going to stop in studio, and I'll be Skyping or online from another state. So we'll join you then. Thanks for joining us today. Be encouraged, never be complacent.